Hello, Space Watchers, and welcome to the first episode of Space for Good, a new production by SpaceWatch.Global, where we try to attempt to fill a niche that we noticed through the years being there and being needed of being somehow tackled. So this is SpaceWatch.Global attempt to try to address directly the question, what can space do for humanity, for the community? And we want to try to do it the SpaceWatch.Global way. So we want to try to reverse the dialogue, not starting from Europe, not starting from the West, not starting from space. We want to start from the end use for those communities that actually are affected by climate, by environmental issues, and they are using space because they need the actual support. So this Space for Good is a bottom-up community, Global South focused podcast and video. Of course, we're going to be us on YouTube when we try to tackle how technology can support humanity, barely mentioning technology. So leaving technology a bit in the back and bringing up in the front humanity, people that are actually making it happen. So in the next series of podcasts, I will be sided by experts, by scientists, by technologists, by researchers, by a fantastic team of space and non-space experts that will help me to understand how space can be applied to our socio-economical system and how we can make the most out of it for the benefits truly of humanity. We're going to try to cut the politics and the regulation as short as possible and really get into it, bringing the problems in the forefront and understanding how we can tackle them. It's an enormous pleasure to have here as our first guest, Divya Sharma, the head of Earth Observation Data Team working in machine learning data analysis at SatSure. Divya, hello, how are you doing?
Hey Emma, hey, greetings to everyone, to all the people listening as well. I'm doing great and super excited to start this dialogue of how we are going to change this using space data.
Fantastic. Thank you for being the test, the one that is opening the show for the first time. Divya has a diverse and extensive work experience in the field of machine learning, computer vision, and data analytics. Impressive. And currently, she holds the position of Vice President of Machine Learning and Data Analytics at SatSure. But I'm not going to be alone in this journey. With me, there is going to be a friend of mine and obviously an esteemed colleague is Mani Thiru. Mani, how are you doing? Welcome.
Excited to be here, Emma.
Thank you, Mani. Mani is an expert on the Asia-Pacific space technology landscape, and with 20 years in the global tech sector, her last role as head of space and satellite technologies at Amazon Web Service for Australia and Asia-Pacific, saw her lead a team of cloud and space experts to enable space startups, university R&D teams, commercial satellite enterprises, as well as government agency-led missions toward success. Thank you, Mani. So Mani will be siding me to help me to understand the economical and geopolitical sometimes context in which we move, because obviously I have a European vision of the market, and if you want to tackle the global South market, makes me feel much more comfortable to have someone that actually understands those dynamics. So Mani, Divya together, they will help me to understand how we're using space in a meaningful, applied way, and they will help me to understand and help us to understand how actually the direction that Divya is giving to SatSure and all the new projects that they are applying, are they helping actually to shape up the economy of several global South countries. So thank you, Divya. Thank you, Mani. Let's get started, shall we? So Divya, let's start from you. I think the first question is the obvious question. What did lead you into geospatial analysis?
Wonderful. Thanks for the question, Emma. And I think I'll go back a little bit in my sort of career and journey, why sort of I pivoted in the industries I'm today. I am a trained robotics person, started that in my college days, started seeing a bit of impact robotics was bringing, then shifted to consumer electronics, also worked on some mixed reality goggles, pretty cool tech, enjoyed cracking the tech to the last bit of it. But then at the end, the question was, what impact is it bringing? What pressing problem are we solving? Like, cool tech is great. We get pretty excited for a day or two, but then what is the long-lasting impact would we see? So it was around the time 2018 when I was looking at agriculture very closely. And back then I was based out of the United States. So looking at the labor shortage in US agriculture, and then quickly started looking at Indian agriculture and how, agriculture being the biggest occupation in India, still very underserved. How can we solve the problem? Because putting sensors on the ground, unlike the West, we cannot have instrumentation on the equipment or not. So the sort of aha moment was, okay, so if we use the observation from space, how and to what extent can we solve the problems in agriculture in India? So this is how it all winded up. And today I use very extensively Earth observation data to crack some of the very, very pressing problems to hoping to make an impact and then in Indian agriculture industry.
Thank you very much, Divya. Maybe you can help us to understand when you mention the problem of agriculture in India. This is a huge topic, obviously. And how can you help to solve them? Can you help us understand what do you mean? Which type of mega problems does India has when it comes to agriculture, and how these problems were dealt with in the past, and how you are trying to make the difference?
Yeah, of course, Emma. So I think the biggest problem is the access to the funds for the farmers, right? So for the biggest time, the India is comprises of low-income farmers, and if I were to say 70% of the altogether occupation in India is coming from agriculture, out of that 80% is already low-income farmer, right? So what happens when you're low-income farmer? You're literally earning $100 a month, right? And with that money, if you want to churn out the productivity of your ground, or be able to fend off climate change and other impacts, you really don't have any room. So the problem with these low-income farmers, they are not present in the credit history. They're not part of the bureau. They've never been able to lend money from a structured, lending businesses. So they end up going searching for funds from unstructured places, and that ends up with exorbitant interest rate or collateral. It's such a vicious cycle that they wanting to bring in more funds to improve the entire agriculture cycle, the productivity and everything. But then they ended up basically just into this vicious circle of being in debt all the time and not seeing the impact on the ground. Traditionally, that is how it's been done. They go out of the system, meaning they look for very unstructured places to bring money in. However, this problem has been looked around from different angles, even from policy, from governments and whatnot. Even when the governments have set up priority sector lending targets, so meaning every private bank has 18% of their cash flow to be deployed in these sectors, still there is not been enough ways to deploy that fund. So even if there are private banks, public banks wanting to support farmers, there is the risk aversion which comes in the way to be able to really help in that way. So it's a weird situation where the ecosystem wants to help, but then because of the risk aversion they have, they're not able to help it out. So the way we have started looking at it a few years ago is, okay, so definitely there's not a dearth of the funds. There are funds. How do we route it correctly or aptly to the people in need? In that case, we ended up using sort of Earth observation data. So the bank has to know two things: whether this farmer has an ability to pay or intent to pay. So the intention comes from the fact that you have the credit history, the person has been in your system for quite some time, whether their payment cycles and due dates have been respected or not. For new farmers, that's absent because they're not part of the credit bureau. So the second part where we can solve is their ability to pay. Can we use the data from space, which is basically majorly from satellites, to then be able to say, what are they growing on this ground? How much is their ability to pay back potentially, right? So what we have started looking at is sort of building a Facebook profile of that land in terms of, for so many years, or we go as far as 5 years or even sometimes 10 years, that this land, what has been growing on this land? How many times it is being grown on that land? Is it irrigated? Are they being impacted by some climate events? What is the potential yield they are getting on the land? So this gives a good proxy to say, okay, this is probably going to be the potential revenue of this farmer Or if I've seen the last 6 seasons in India, we have Kharif and Rabi in a year. So obviously, if I've seen the 6 seasons with this farmer, I should be able to give a good indication of whether they have the ability to produce that much. And that acts as a really good lever for banks to decide which one to support or not. So this is one of the ways we've been trying to tackle in this problem. And actually, we were able to sort of support 2 million farmers in India for getting this credit. And we are hoping to do it to 20 million soon in 5 to 7 years is what we are hoping.
Why from 2 million to 20 million? That's an increase. Divya, I love the definition of a Facebook profile for each farmer, for each land, and trying to basically lower the risk applied to giving credit to the farmers and allowing to have a proxy, a prediction of how much the land can actually produce. I was wondering, do you support also the subsequent phases? So this is obviously a kind of predictive tool to help the banks and the credit institutions to give credits to the farmers that have potential based on data analysis, of course, which is the most quantitative approach we have. Do you support also the farmer to actually maintain this good practice, to actually get good crop, to have a better yield, etc.? So beyond the initial phase, that's maybe my question is.
Yeah, absolutely, Emma. So yeah, we are in this journey for the farmer, starting from underwriting when we're literally preparing our land for the upcoming crop, right? From there, we want to make sure even the banks are aware and even government authorities are aware how the sowing has been progressing, right? So which part of the areas have been sown, if at all there's an area which needs more attention due to a delayed, monsoon, which is again a phenomena by which the irrigation happens in India. So this way, like literally monitoring the entire crop life cycle. So if I were to talk about the crop phenology, there are different stages. We do monitor in terms of, okay, bank sees there's a risk upcoming because of heat wave or because of flooding event. I do need to deploy more funds there because this person had a good potential to pay back, but because of this curveball, they're not able to sort of sustain to that level of potential revenue. So the monitoring comes into play, and then also collection in terms of from the banking side again. For banks to make this a profitable line of business, they also need to know where should I go first to collect. So okay, harvest is happening in XYZ district. So I should probably route my resources to do the collections there to minimize my risk of collection. In terms of farmers, we are not right now serving directly, like having a B2C setup where the farmers directly, get advised and stuff. However, we believe in making a change in a much more higher level so that we can impact multiple farmers. So pushing a lending from top down would probably allow us to reach more farmers than getting sort of had that one-on-one advisory and stuff.
Even so, I was just going to add, let me humanize some what Divya is saying, Emma, because I was in India a few years ago, and I was there when there were huge protests in most of the major cities. People were out there protesting for and on behalf of farmers. Let me recap a couple of things that Divya said, which will give us some context for the scale of the problem that SatSure has been dealing with. India is 1.5 billion, nearly 1.5 billion population, and agriculture, like Divya said, remains the principal source of livelihood for over 70% of the population. That is a huge number. It is a huge number. Now, what a lot of researchers have discovered across the world, and this is common to farmers across the globe, climate change has a massive impact on this sector. But particularly, they found a strong correlation, rising temperatures and the rate of suicides. I bring this up because this was the crux of a lot of the protest marches that I had front row, access to when I was visiting India. At the stage that I was there, I think about 12,000 farmers in India had committed suicide across the period of about 10 years. That is way too many farmers. And so the problem that SatSure is fixing, not just in terms of the crop output, productivity. The banking sector, the insurance sector simply didn't know how to look after farmers when it came to lending. They just didn't have enough of the quantitative data, enough of the metrics that Divya is now talking about, enough of the metrics that SatSure have come up with in such a short amount of time. So the impact, I guess, the astounding thing for me, it's not just about crops, the livestock, it's about the people. So this, one of the reasons, Emma, you and I were so excited about Faith for Good is the impact to community. And this impact is huge. What they're doing is not just, getting better credit scores for farmers, but really revolutionizing how the farming community in India works with the banking sector, with the insurance sector. So I just wanted to sort of double click on what she said, because she's a lot of information sharing, Divya, but I just want to set context for people who are listening. This is a big, big problem that you're taking a crack at, and you've come a long ways in such a short amount of time. So I have huge amounts of admiration for the kind of work that you're doing.
And also, Manis, just to add on to what you say, not only 70% of this economical system is based on farming, but if I understood correctly, Divya, 80% of this 70% lives in poverty or low income conditions. So we are speaking about a double edge sword. Yeah, not only you depend on a business that is partially, at least, uncontrollable and is influenced and impacted by climate change of the same money, but is also particularly poorly remunerated. So they struggle continuously even to make a living with something so fundamental as agriculture, which is ridiculous. But as you say, Mani, this approach that Divya and SatSure proposes is kind of like, it goes beyond the technical abilities. It actually tackles a huge issue in the banking system. Absolutely, I agree with you.
And just to add one more, Emma, I know we're layering it with the impact level. Now see, this goes all the way back to the food security, right? So it's not only just the lending, it's not related to the food production. Ultimately, if we are still leaving almost 40% of the population insecure about food, then definitely we need to solve it.
Absolutely. I was having a curiosity. Do you have your own satellites, or do you have the support of some other satellite for your analysis, for your data, Divya?
Yeah, good question, Emma. So since we initially wanted to understand the applicability of the Earth observation data to do a problem solving at scale, we did not start with launching our own satellite. So we do use European Space Agency satellites for some of our problem statements of monitoring. We also buy data from some of the satellite vendors. But having understood the space, having understood the scale and impact which we can bring, we are actually launching our own satellite from maybe 2 years from now. We have tested, did some aerial testing, had some really great results and analysis over the data. But yeah, we didn't start with launching hardware up in the space without having a vision for it.
Which is really interesting, right? Because we hear a lot of times about most space companies start with the launch of a satellite. That seems to be the starting place. But you guys have actually, let me think. Are you? I think you've raised a substantial amount of capital. I think you're net positive. At least you've broken even. You're in a very sort of positive area, and you've done that all without launching satellite. So that, to me, I don't know, Emma, but we can talk about sustainable space development here as well. I think it's a very interesting approach that the founders have taken with this.
Absolutely, Mani. Please go ahead, elaborate on that. It's very interesting. I'm interested in listening to your idea.
Well, I'm just, pleasantly surprised. And I think it's something that for a lot of space entrepreneurs, the idea of validating an idea and a concept, a go-to-market strategy, a solution that is actually desired by the end customer or is solving a problem, before you go ahead and invest a ton of money into, building something, launching something, and making sure it gets into orbit before you start downloading the information. I think that's been beautifully demonstrated by the team at SatSure. You don't necessarily have to do that. If you have the money, great. You have the luxury of doing that. But you've been very nifty, Divya, I think. Can you share a little bit? I don't know if you know about the founders' inception ideas around how the show was planned, but I'm pretty sure that there's a link there.
Yeah, indeed. And I think, Mani, I would have to also give credit to experts like you to sort of, give that thought leadership and understanding on when is the right time to do things, such as like launching your own hardware and whatnot. And launching in hardware without having an end plan or game plan about it is just sort of waste of a lot of things, not just money, but also a lot of effort. Of course, we have, debris in the space, which is a bigger problem now. But just rather than over-engineering ahead of the time, just understanding the bare minimum you would need to solve this problem in terms of resolution, in terms of repeatability, all this plays into part in designing the hardware. And yeah, I think going back to your question, the thought was basically understanding the all downstream sort of applications of problem statement, which we can solve at scale. And then slowly building on top, having our own capacity in hardware space. Because of course, at the end of the day, for having a business continuity, or in fact, like having oxygen given to all of the things we do need to come to a space where, okay, we are having the full cycle or full stack Earth observation company built up. And this was a thought process, Pradeep and Rashmi, two other founders, had when they were thinking it through. Because initially the ideas were many, but they get killed and they get, you reiterate over it and some of them fly. So we are at this position where we know how to do the end-to-end linking from the data coming into all the way decision intelligence driven out of that data.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think at this stage of your the company's maturity, and believing that you've earned yourself in the market, not just in India, but you're a global company now. It totally makes sense to have a full stack technology that's end to end, takes care of everything that you need for your customers. But again, I reserve my admiration for the early stages when you decided this is the customer problem we're going to solve. And you tried solving that before investing too much into, the beauty of the technology, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's something interesting, particularly like, Divya mentioned space. That's one thing. But just, the amount of hardware that we're putting out into orbit, into space, we know that 70% is dead on arrival, right? So this is something worthwhile. Sustainability as a core theme for this podcast is something that we will keep talking about. Now, this is a good example from a business development perspective, from a technology deployment perspective, following a specific technology milestone, getting to the customer validation, and then deciding to go all in on it. I think that's pretty brilliant.
Absolutely, Mani. Thank you for bringing up. That I completely see this in the same way as you. It's very refreshing to hear us a new business approach that demonstrates that thinking about revenue in a different way is possible. It's possible to start from the community. It's possible to start from the problem. It's possible to start from the end user. And it's possible to do it as sustainably as possible. Completely agree with you, Mani. Okay, 24 minutes in. We strive to stay within 20. Of course, we failed already. But last question, Divya. This is my last question for every speaker. So it's always the same question. We can go to Mars, and yet,
Emma, we have 45% of our population which is food insecure, right? And the farmers who are trying to bridge this gap, they are still missing the ecosystem. So I think that there's a lot of things we can do, a big role we can play.
Thank you, Divya. So this is my provocative, I don't want to call it provocative, I don't think it's so provocative, but to show that this sector, the space sector, is not only extraterrestrial travel, is not only billionaires traveling to space for a few minutes, is also made of real people, real scientists, engineers, a community that is trying to help each other and is trying to tackle the most burning problems that we are having: poverty, hunger, thirst, climate change. Thank you, Divya, for being the first testimony of this challenge, of this change Also, my wish is that in Space for Good, Mani and I would be able to meet more and more Divyas in our journey. This is also an open call to everyone listening to the first episode of Space for Good. If you think you're a good fit for Space for Good, write to us, write to me. If you think you will be interested in understanding how Space for Good is built and how you can support the podcast, please also write me, because this is my little contribution to the chaos. But of course, those are open to everyone that want to see a real change in how we communicate technology and how we use technology for the good of our planet and our brothers and sisters. Divya, I thank you so much for being here with us. And Mani, you are an invaluable member of the team. Thank you for your fantastic comments. As you know, I'm not an economist, so I will have never be able to contextualize Divya's work the way you did it, especially in India. I thank you both. It's an honor for me to be on stage with you. And of course, I will see you to the next episode of Space for Good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Divya.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Mani, for the great conversation and the thought leadership you guys are bringing in.
Thank you. Thank you, Mani.